Good morning, everybody. Hope we're doing well today. Alex, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Brian. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. Yeah. Been a good week. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us today. Today, we're going to do a little presentation called From Start to Finish, Crafting Your Financial Plan Through Life's Phases. My name is Brian Stormont. I'm one of the managing partners here at Insight Wealth Strategies. And joining me today is Alex Austin. He is one of the lead advisors here at Insight Wealth Strategies. Today, all right, I think let's go back and redo that. I want to just get into the introduction and then into the presentation. So we can go into like when I start saying, my name is Brian Stormont, let's just go into the next,
Excellent.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Brian Stormont. Today, we're going to do a little presentation called From Start to Finish. And joining me today is Alex Austin. Alex, how you doing today, sir?
Good to see you, Brian. Happy Friday. And Julie, looking forward to the conversation with you.
Yeah, happy Friday to you as well. Yeah, excited to talk about this. Again, my name is Brian Stormont. I'm a managing partner here at Insight Wealth Strategies. Joining me today is one of our lead advisors, Alex Austin. And today, the purpose of the presentation is to talk about some of the phases that we as financial planners encounter in people's lives and the priorities that we tend to see in terms of financial planning that we observe around those particular ages. So another way to say that is there's just certain phases where we tend to find that certain priorities bubble up to the top of the list, if you will. And we want to kind of highlight those and talk a little bit about them. And that way, give you a sense of what might be things that you should be thinking about if you haven't already. Alex, this is a phenomenon we tend to find over and over with clients. I presume you've observed this obviously yourself, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think this slide really does a good job of outlining how the priorities and focus can change throughout life. And so from 25 to 30, that's going to look one way and it's going to look different for someone who's over 65. So it's nice to be able to unpack this with you.
Great, yeah. Well, let's get into it. Let's just start talking about some of these different phases.
All right. So our first group is the 25 to 35-year-old group. And so establishing a financial foundation is really the anchor, and the centerpiece of that anchor is the emergency fund. And a good rule of thumb is to have at least 6 months of living expenses in an emergency fund. This could either be a savings or a high yield savings account is another good option we see a lot of people do. We see a lot of people in this stuff are combining households. So people are dating and now getting married. And so now we're combining households and budget and savings that comes with that. And navigating work benefits is also a key part of that. And Brian, I'm sure you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah. So this is a phase, ladies and gentlemen, where we tend to find people are, they're kind of get their feet under them a little bit. And certainly as we're moving forward in life, maybe we're starting to get that, first, critical job that's going to send us on our way in our career. There's really important decisions that need to get made early on. And when we talk about, say, like work benefits, there's some key ones there. So if I'm, single, young, don't have any responsibilities of any major sort, and, don't have a wife or children, I might not be that worried about, say, things like life insurance, but certainly things like disability coverage, that's going to be really important. And one of the things we tend to find sometimes with younger folks is they haven't signed up for some of those protective benefits. And those are things that we think are really important. We want to make sure that, God forbid, you get injured, that paycheck doesn't just stop, that you are protected. Sadly, we have encountered folks over the years who have unfortunately been disabled for extended periods of time. Fortunately, for the vast majority of those people, they did have that coverage in place and they will continue to receive income. Really, really critical part. So this is just, again, making some really good, prudent decisions early on in your career.
Yeah, and to build on that, Brian, debt management is also a critical piece as well. We see a lot of people, especially these days, with student loan debt, but that's only one form of debt. We see credit card debt, car debt, and the reality is that it's important to be able to manage that so it doesn't get out of control. And so one of the good rules of thumb is to focus on paying off the highest interest rate debt first. And the benefit there is that the person can save on interest expense over time by being able to pay that off sooner. And so you hear different rules of thumb, but a good planning rule of thumb is to pay off the highest interest rate debt first. And then from there, it allows us to be able to have more money available for retirement accounts. And Brian, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think, all these three bullet points, they really do kind of tie together. And certainly in that first bullet point, the budgeting and savings, obviously you got to get a budget first. And then where you've got some excess cash flow, that's where you can start to pay down some of that debt. And to the degree that it's possible, if we can start to introduce some savings, that's really important. Now, obviously, we really highlight early on the emergency fund first. That's critical. We want to build that up. And Alex just alluded to the idea of 3 to 6 months of living expenses. But once we've got that in place, let's start planning for the future. We want to start building those dollars up. The critical part here is when you're young, those dollars that get saved into maybe that retirement account, that 401k, they have many, many years of growth in front of them. That's the one thing we as financial planners try to really convey to people, particularly on the younger side. You can't get those years back. You want to get that money working for you as much as possible. So the earlier you can do it, absolutely the better. Alex, any thoughts on that as well?
No, I think that those are all good points. I would add, as you start to sign up for those accounts, we can always look at, does it make sense to do pre-tax or after-tax contributions, and making sure we're maximizing all the benefits within the plan.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. And just for what it's worth, we tend to find younger people when they have, a little bit lower income, that after-tax Roth is maybe the better solution. As you move on into your career and your income hopefully goes up, pre-tax tax-deductible contributions start to gain in importance. But moving along, we now find ourselves kind of moving forward in life, and maybe we're starting to kind of build that career, and just sort of general life considerations start to get a little more complicated. Now we're starting to build some wealth, and maybe those dollar amounts in those retirement accounts are starting to get up a little bit. Early on, maybe you're just going with an index fund, like an S&P 500 index fund. But as those dollars start to get up in value, maybe you want to begin to consider diversification and start to look at maybe some other savings vehicles that are available in the retirement plan. Alex, any thoughts on the building wealth and investments that you want to contribute?
Yeah, I think the important thing there is we want to be diversified, not just from an investment standpoint, like you mentioned, but also from a time perspective. And so are we saving across the board between pre-tax accounts, taxable accounts, after-tax accounts, including Roth IRAs, just to make sure we're diversified across that time as well? I think that's a lot of things that people kind of miss, and it's one of the things that we talk a lot about in the planning process, in addition to helping manage risk. And then also we're just fully diversified across our investment assets, and also things like home and our personal property as well. And then from there, family considerations is a big part of this segment. So we're looking at reviewing life insurance. So by this time we're having kids, we're starting families, we have a home, or maybe we change homes. And so making sure we have enough life insurance in the event that someone were to predecease, that there's enough coverage in place to get that surviving spouse to and through retirement, as well as covering costs as well. Part of our planning process is we'll actually do a gap analysis. We'll actually quantify how much life insurance is needed, so someone's not buying too much life insurance or too little life insurance. And then related to that, college planning as well. Our software is tapped into the Department of Education, so we can get real-time cost for any college in the US and any US territory. So it really allows us to be precise with our planning when it comes to education needs. And then related to that is long-term care planning. And Brian, do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, in the same way as college planning, the costs associated with some of these items have gotten pretty significant. College planning obviously is very expensive. The reality is long-term care expenses are quite significant as well. And the fact of the matter is upwards of 70% of all retirees will encounter some form of long-term care need. So to the degree that you can start to separate some money aside to cover those costs earlier on and save for that future possibility, absolutely something you want to be thinking about. Alternatively, these days you can also consider, perhaps picking up a long-term care insurance policy as well. And there's some pros and cons in both strategies. So, again, this is the type of gap analysis that we certainly would want to sit down with our clients and take a look at and determine, hey, is this something that we should be addressing? Should we be funding, or do we have the ability to perhaps cover the cost out of pocket? These are definitely important considerations. at this juncture, because again, you've got all those years ahead of you to be able to let that money grow.
No, that's a really, really good point, Brian. And also, the priorities will change over time. And so maybe the focus is the emergency fund, building retirement assets, kind of getting to retirement, and then some of these other things will come into play, like long-term care planning and looking at that. So, part of it's going to be a bit of a moving target at times, but just kind of making sure we're addressing those things along the way. And related to that is estate planning. It's very important, and we encourage clients, if they haven't done so, to get estate planning documents in place. The worst thing that can happen is for no direction, no guidance in place. And so someone's going to decide how those assets will be distributed. And it's better if you do that versus having the probate court decide that for you. And so having a will and trust, power of attorneys, beneficiaries lined up prevents that from happening.
Yeah, I think this is, for better or worse, this is just something that most people need to deal with. Frankly, whether you're single and have no, dependents, or you have a extensive family and you have a significant level of wealth, it's just something that needs to be dealt with. And I get it. Going to sit down with an attorney to talk about what happens when you die, not exactly the funnest way to spend one's time. But what we can tell you is we have observed over the years many instances of people where, they have a family member, a parent or a sibling or someone who passes away, had no estate planning documentation in place, and it is just an absolute mess. It's very slow. It's very expensive to distribute those assets. It can become very complicated with different family members thinking that they know, what the desire of the deceased person was. Having that documentation in place, just such an important thing. And we really encourage people to want to go and do it, even if it does mean, as I mentioned, sitting with an attorney for a couple of hours.
Yeah, that's right. Really good points there. The last piece is home ownership. So we've seen clients on both sides of this. We're upsizing and moving into bigger homes, and clients working on downsizing, moving to smaller homes. But the key thing is a good planning rule of thumb is making sure you're not buying too much home. And so we like to use the 28% housing ratio. And all that means is taking your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, that should be no more than 28% of your monthly gross income, just to ensure you're giving yourself a comfortable margin to be able to absorb all the carrying costs of the home, but still have enough to be able to spend money on the things you like doing, saving and investing. And so you don't feel too constrained from a cash flow perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a great rule of thumb, Alex. I know that sometimes, like with some of the, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac underwriting standards, they'll actually go with a higher threshold, but that oftentimes results in, folks feeling a little bit more constrained. So I think that's a really good rule of thumb to try to stick to as best as possible. Although we all know housing prices, certainly here in California, but really nationwide are pretty high. So, we just try to do the best we can. But yeah, so I think, these are the years where, obviously we're trying to kind of build the wealth, we're kind of working towards some of those family, considerations perhaps, and starting to accumulate really. As we move into kind of that next phase, here, now we're starting to, really kind of look forward to the possibility of retirement. So it's not uncommon where we sit down with folks that are in their 50s and they see retirement on the horizon, and they're starting to think about whether or not they're ready for it. And, the reality is sometimes they have been spending money on helping kids with school or to get into that house, or, life, events have happened, and they're starting to realize, boy, I need to catch up. I need to start saving more. The reality is with retirement accounts, the rules at age 50 plus change in a way where you can start to funnel even more money into those retirement accounts. So that catch up ability is really, really critical. And then, of course, taking a look at, am I allocating correctly as I move towards retirement? Those are all going to be really important. Alex, I think you would agree with that, yeah?
Absolutely. There's been some new changes in retirement planning with some of the recent legislation that's been passed in Washington that allows you to really supercharge your savings and to really kind of help with that catch-up process. And generally in this stage, we see people really at the top end of their earnings. So it just allows them more financial flexibility to save into those accounts. Like you said, Brian, to be able to catch up. And same time, it's also navigating some other life events. Divorces can happen, caring for aging parents as well. That can be a squeeze. And so that's something we want to factor in. In addition to fine tuning estate planning, we may have created an estate plan 20 years ago and life probably looks different 20 years later. So making sure we've updated that, making sure that kind of captures our current wishes, making sure the personal representative or the executor is the right person. So those are some of the things we want to fine tune. And Brian, Social Security is all, and Medicare is also a big part of someone who is transitioning to retirement. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so certainly, Social Security, critical source of income for many retirees. And of course, you can take it as early as 62 and delay it all the way out till age 70 if you like. Understanding what the pros and cons of that decision look like is going to be really, really important. And obviously with Medicare, for a lot of retirees, if they're able to retire prior to age 65, Medicare is sort of the promised land because now they can have just very good coverage, typically at a relatively reasonable price. For those individuals, though, that do retire prior to 65, understanding what your healthcare coverage is going to look like is critical. Of course, if you have an employer that offers a retiree medical plan pre-65, that's great. Unfortunately, not all organizations do. And so understanding what the expenses are going to look like for those intervening years is going to be really important because a lot of people do get a little bit of sticker shock when they see the price of some of those premiums. But again, figuring out how that fits into your overall financial needs, that's critical, as is that understanding of your cash flow at large. So once those paychecks stop, once you stop working, what do my cash flow needs look like? And how is my portfolio allocated? So for much of the life chapters that we've been showing so far, people have been in what's called accumulation phase. So they're trying to just make that pile of money get as big as possible. Well, as we start to get to the tail end of this chapter now, between 50 and say 65, we're starting to get closer to that phase called distribution phase. That's a very different type of investment strategy. Now we're trying to preserve that portfolio and let it extend as long as possible to provide that income we need. And understanding how that transition works is going to be a really critical part. I think you'd agree, right, Alex?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would echo everything that you said. And in terms of managing that cash flow, it's also we want to understand what's the most tax efficient way to kind of be able to access those dollars we spent those years accumulating. That way we don't make mistakes that cause an adverse tax event where we're paying unnecessary taxes, and we can avoid those taxes as we move into retirement.
Yeah, totally. Great point there.
So now we're at the point where we've retired. Now we're at 65 plus, and so really we're kind of firmly we've transitioned to retirement. So we have that a sustainable cash flow withdrawal strategy. So we're being able to comfortably have our income needs met in retirement. So one of the other areas here is healthcare consideration. So we're aging, and so there's probably more healthcare needs at this phase of our life, in addition to some legacy planning consideration. And you probably have some thoughts on that, Brian.
Absolutely, yeah. So when we talk about legacy planning, understanding sort of what assets are going to transfer to the kids, that's a really critical component. It's also important to note that, these days it's not uncommon where we have clients who kind of want to transfer that money now. They want to try to see the kids be able to enjoy it while they're still living. They don't want to just pass it along when they die. And that's not an uncommon one. But, to echo one of the key points Alex alluded to just a moment ago, the taxation of all of this is a really critical consideration. So we want to understand how that looks. And quite candidly, we do have some clients who, start to broach that conversation with us, but they're still pretty young. And, as a percentage of their overall net worth, they're talking about numbers that maybe are just a little excessive given the longevity they've got in front of them. So we want to make sure that there's a little, kind of back and forth before they just start handing away those assets, because needless to say, you don't want to have to try to ask for them back later on. So yeah, certainly that's a big part of it. And the charitable gifting, that's a big part as well. Qualified charitable donation strategies with the required minimum distribution. That's a big part of the conversation. Alex and I certainly have. Alex, I think you talk about that quite a bit with clients as well, huh?
Yeah, it's clients who want to kind of give back and to make a difference, and to the wealth and dollars that they have accumulated to be able to help improve society. And so they have a lot of causes that they care about. And so coming up with a plan and different ways to be able to do that. You mentioned some of them. Donor advice fund is another way people can use to give back and also get some tax benefits on the front end as well. So there's just a variety of different things that we can employ. And so it's how to best integrating that into someone's overall plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the final bullet point there is really the enjoying retirement. And I got to say, as a financial planner, that's the part that I certainly find one of the most rewarding aspects of what we get to do. I was just doing a review with a couple yesterday, and they were telling me about the couple of trips that they had planned for themselves for later this year, but then they got a couple trips that each one of them are going to be doing with kids or grandkids. And I just thought, oh my God, it's what a great, year you've got laid out in front of you. And just was so excited for them. And so for us, we look at that as sort of the culmination of a lot of really good planning that resulted in their ability to do those things and have those experiences. And that for us is incredibly rewarding, right? I would imagine you agree, Alex, yeah?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I don't think there's much to add to that, but you said it really well.
No, thank you. Now, the reality is, as we move through those phases of life, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes, unfortunately, life happens. And these types of events sometimes cannot be that pleasant. Things like getting laid off or having a health event, perhaps, getting a divorce or, a passing of a family member, and certainly the stock market, being volatile. Don't want to necessarily dwell on any of these particular items for any longer than necessary, but the one thing we certainly want to convey is that in our experience, where someone has a comprehensive financial plan, their ability to respond more proactively to these adverse events is just simply better. That is what we have observed. And so one of the things that we would, hopefully be able to, encourage today is the idea that getting a comprehensive financial plan in place, it's going to benefit you for all the good things in life, but occasionally there are some negative things in life, and we want to be ready for those.
And so to that point, Brian, we do a lot of comprehensive planning for clients. It's really the core of who we are as a firm. And so why would someone consider Insight? These are the key reasons. You have a dedicated team. So it's not just one person, but you have myself, Brian, you have our teammates behind us, but there's always someone around who can help answer questions and to be able to help execute your plan. We do consistent reviews with clients. A lot of our clients are on a quarterly cadence. Some are more often than that, depending on the need. We're relationship driven. And so really focus on building relationship, helping understand their personal financial circumstances so we can really tailor the plan towards them. We are fiduciaries, which means we are obligated to put your interest ahead of ours at all times. And really one of the most important things, we are a fee-only planning firm. So we don't sell any products or get any commissions, but we're compensated by our clients. And that's not a lot of firms can say that they are fee-only. So we are unique in that standpoint. Brian, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I think you summed it up great, Alex. I mean, I think that, for us, it is that long-term relationship with the client that we really enjoy. And we've gone out of our way to try to structure our company in a way that it really tries to eliminate conflict of interest and keeps things very crystal clear in terms of how we're compensated. But again, when we think about the comprehensive approach that we take in the relationship with our clients, it's all those different parts of that planning circle that you see there that are really, really critical. And the reality is that as we move through time, the rules around those different facets of the financial planning world, they change. Things in the economy change, things in the tax law change. Our clients' personal lives have events that cause things to change. And it's having that relationship in place that allows us to have a meaningful conversation and bring whatever that broad topic is down to that client's individual situation and talk about how it impacts them directly. So that's the type of work that we try to provide here at Insight. So again, here at Insight, we are a California and Texas-based firm. So our headquarters are here in San Ramon, California. We also have offices out in Houston, Texas. But the reality is we have clients all over the country, and we look really forward to the opportunity to hopefully have a conversation with anyone we've not had a chance to talk with yet. So if you saw something today that kind of piqued your interest, or there's anything that came out of this conversation that, made you think, hey, I'd like to maybe continue that conversation a little bit further, we look forward to the opportunity to at least have a chat. Obviously, if it's an opportunity to continue or provide financial planning services, great. But certainly if it's just a simple question that you're looking to get clarification on, that's great for us too. We really want to make sure that people are getting good, comprehensive information that's specific to their needs and their questions. And so feel free to take a look at our website or call our 800 number. And if we have a chance to get a chance to talk with you or to get to meet you, we would really love that. So again, I will say thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Again, Brian Stormont, Alex Austin. Alex, really appreciate your input today, guy. Really thought this was very hopefully useful for folks. Any thoughts before we close out?
No, I enjoyed the conversation with you, and hope to talk to more people as a result of seeing this presentation.
Couldn't agree more, guy. All right. Well, hey, enjoy the rest of your Friday, Alex. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day as well, okay? Thanks.